Shalom, brothers and sisters!
Shalom, everybody.
The language of creation.
Chapter 3.
Returning to the Garden of Eden.
Woo!
Oh yeah, on the way back to the garden. Yahushua got your back when you're walking. Back to the beginning of light. Stressed to be so bright. All right. All right,
so we're going to get started.
Yes.
Elohim planted a garden eastward in Eden, and there he put the human he had formed. From a strictly materialistic perspective, science has debunked most of traditional cosmology. However, as discussed in the previous chapter, the highest level of biblical interpretation has been left intact by scientific discovery. Moreover, this level is the only one that truly matters from a spiritual perspective because it fully encapsulates the meaning of humanity within creation. Unfortunately, the higher levels of interpretation have been marginalized in recent times because of the scientific ability to explain phenomena exclusively in terms of matter and mechanical causality. Nevertheless, it is a mistake to interpret the Bible using a scientific model of the universe instead of its own cosmological perspective. No matter how archaic it may appear to modern sensibilities. And now there's a picture.
Check it out. Show it to them. Oh, explain it.
Is it fucking...
It's fine.
It's kind of hard to see, but
it's right there.
And so we go from a dendrocentric model, which is a reflection of heaven, earth, and the sun revolving around the heaven and earth. And then that's the original biblical model. And it moves to a geocentric, which is the earth and the sun revolving around the earth, to a heliocentric, which is the earth revolving around the sun. And so the idea is, even though scientifically we claim that the earth revolves around the sun, from our perspective and the perspective of the Bible, the way we see the world through your own eyes, you see the sun revolve around the earth. That's how we understand it from our perspective, and that's what was a biblical perspective. And so the things that are written are going to convey the world and reality according to that mindset, because we actually don't ever see the earth revolving around the sun. Now we could kind of think about it like that, but technically we don't.
All right. Admittedly, interpreting the Bible with its own cosmology is a difficult task because our current worldview has little in common with that ancient perspective. This huge discrepancy was inevitable because we arrived at it by artificially warping our natural perceptions with telescopes and microscopes. At this point, humanity has opened its eyes to such an extent that our conception of space and time corresponds to the point of view of an alien robot gazing at our solar system from a far region. To rediscover the biblical point of view, we must pretend that our eyes are not geared with thousands of telescopes and microscopes, and that we are a little for quasars and quarks.
No, we care little for quasar.
And then we care little for quasars and quarks.
Quasars are the biggest structures in the world, in the universe, supposedly, and quarks are the smallest structure according to quantum physics.
Moreover, we will need to reposition ourselves within space and time by looking past the heliocentric and geocentric viewpoints toward an ancient cosmology. This archaic worldview may be described as tree-centric or dendrocentric. For lack of a better word, we will temporarily adopt this perspective to rediscover ancient biblical cosmology and reclaim its metaphysical foundations.
Yep. So, going back to the pictures, we see the dendrocentric or the tree-centric, like this, and this is the model. It's hard to. Oops.
There you go.
Okay.
Okay. There it is. Just leave it at.
Yeah, something like that.
All
so
right.
you see heaven and earth, and we see like what appears to be a tree format in the center, which is arrows, and what it's saying, it's a reflection. So earth is a reflection of heaven, and the sun revolves around this reflection in a sense. And that's how the world was thought of back in the biblical times. And so today we have a scientific method of viewing the world, and we're trying to decipher what the Bible is saying with the scientific method, and it doesn't match. It doesn't jive.
Right. It brings all these complications. Like, the thing that made a lot of sense to me was when it describes water just as being a liquid, or like Jonah getting swallowed by a fish.
They didn't have a word for whale,
Yeah.
so it says a fish.
Yeah.
It may have been a whale.
Yeah, I mean, it's a sea creature. It's something in the water, So it's like common, it's not like, oh yeah, it had to be a mammal, and
Right.
it was
back in the day, all creatures in the water were considered fish, and because they didn't have the classification that we do now, scientifically speaking.
knowledge has increased.
And so we're trying to get back to that mindset so we could better understand what the scriptures are trying to convey.
Damn.
And I think a big portion of it is, this idea of as above, so below. And heavenly ideals are higher, and that's what we should strive for on earth. We have to pull it down so that heaven and earth meet.
Hallelujah. So that we bring Yahuwah's kingdom here.
Amen. Next one.
So, yeah, it's very interesting that, this is just to open up our minds from being closed off by the technology way of life. Right?
Yeah.
Sum it up.
Shalom.
Shalom.